Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle, the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and today is a great day to be hosting a podcast for you because I'm doing it solo. So it is all good. We have a great show today talking about some things near and dear to my heart. And one of those things that is near and dear to my heart are the great listeners we have that have made us a global top 10% podcast. Remember, you can reach us just as they can at Bufnagle at Bufnagle.com. Remember to share the love, share the buff, give us a 5-star review, subscribe, like, smiley stars, whatever those things are on your podcast app that make my life better will be a thing that makes your life better. Remember to tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. And somewhere very deep in the show notes is a link where you could, if you wanted to, you could buy me a coffee. So today is the first of a couple episodes. I think it'll be at least 2. It might be 3. So either that's yay or it's oh rats. Anyway, we Mrs. Bufnagle and I took a trip to Europe a couple of weeks ago. We went back to France and did some things we had always wanted to do, and did some things that did before that we wanted to do again, and had some great experiences and some not as great experiences. And we're going to share all those things with you here in this episode, and probably the next one. I think it'll probably be 2. We took about 10 days. Depends on how you count them, right? Because when you go over there, you have a day that's only 18 hours. And when you come back, you have one that's 30. And it's kind of hard to know how they all line up, which days should count and which do not. That's a lesson for somebody else who wants to worry about those sorts of things. So it was about 10 days. We left on a Monday, came back on a Friday. Maybe that makes it 11. I don't know, something like that. But we had we had a great time. We flew over here from Indianapolis. We flew to Atlanta, and then we flew from Atlanta to Paris. And Delta's great, United's great. What are the other ones? American's great. All the Air France and British Air. They all have partners and all those kinds of things. But this, if you're in Indy, if you're up in the upper Midwest, don't bother going south and then going east, because when you go east, you have to go north anyway. And the flight from Atlanta to Paris was remarkably long. I was surprised at how long it took to get over there. But it takes like the last time I had flown over there, I had flown out of Philadelphia, and that was a lot shorter. And of course, it's shorter because it's closer. It's a lot closer. So lesson number 1, if you're going from Indianapolis to Paris, don't go through Atlanta. There's nothing wrong with Atlanta. It's great. It's fine. Wonderful. But it's a lot farther, and that's not as much fun. We, eventually you sit on the plane, you get a little bored with that, a little tired. We got there the next afternoon, and we had a little bit of time at the airport there in Paris at Charles de Gaulle, had a little lunch, and then moved on to the TGV train, the super speedy train, which whisked us south to Avignon, which was about, I don't know, 3 hours, something like that. Maybe it was 4, maybe it was 2.5. I don't remember, something like that. And we got to Avignon that evening. And the reason we went to Avignon is that Avignon was very close by to a place that we actually wanted to go, which is the next topic here. Avignon was great, but we had an extra day there in Avignon and decided to take advantage of that old city. And I guess people have heard of Avignon. It's down there in the south part of France, not far from Marseille. Is that what you say? On the Mediterranean there. And it's kind of an old town, quite old, and it held the papacy when the papacy was kind of in exile. Some people call it the Babylonian exile of the papacy in the 1300s. In 1305, I think it was. In 1305, Pope Clement V was elected, and he was from France, and he said, "No, I'm not going to Rome. I don't I don't want to go there. So he spent a couple of years hanging out there in Avignon, where he was from. And then a couple of years later, he actually moved all of his stuff, all of his people, his cabinet, his advisors, the curia, moved to Avignon as well in March of 1309. And then there were subsequently 6 more popes that were elected and stayed there. They were all French. Pope John the 22nd, Pope Benedict the 12th, Pope Clement the 6th, Pope Innocent the 6th, Pope Urban the 5th, and Pope Gregory the 11th were all there in Avignon. And then things get kind of dicey. There's this is a whole episode that we could do. This is not an episode. This is not a podcast on the history of the popes. So, because that would take us decades to do. But there were, let's just say there was the French king and the Holy Roman Empire and the Papal States and the Vatican, and they were all kind of fighting for power there in Europe at the time, and that led to this Avignon thing, and then eventually led to them coming back to Rome, and then it led to some other people saying, "Well, no, that doesn't count." So we're going to have a different line of popes. That we're going to have some what they're called in Catholic circles. They're called anti-popes now. Pope Clement VII and Pope Benedict XIII were anti-popes in Avignon after the papacy actually went back to Rome. So there were like 2 popes. They were arguing about that. And then there were some more popes along that line that weren't in Avignon. Meanwhile, the real papacy was going on in Rome. And there's a lot of argument about this, okay? And I'm not going to go into it. But what that means is there is a papal palace and gardens and things like that in Avignon. And we took some time to do that on the morning while we were there in Avignon. There's a cathedral there, and one of the popes is buried there. You can see his crypt. There's all sorts of old wonderful stuff there, paintings and things, great artwork and stuff. But in general, the palace is there's not a whole lot of stuff there because, well, when they moved out, they took their stuff, right? So it's a beautiful building. There's like I said, there's a cathedral there, and there's museums and things. But we just had a morning, so we did the cathedral. We did some other walking around town and saw some very nice things there in Avignon. We saw some, when you're in France, I always look to buy nice soap. So we found a soap shop, and we also found a place where they sold some tablecloths and things, maybe just generally cloth. It was there. Is that a Cloistered? Is that what happens there? So we bought some tablecloths that were very pretty that we couldn't get here, and that was a great thing. As we were wandering through town, it's a very walkable city, right? It's hard to drive and easy to walk unless you're on the outside. Then you can drive, but it's hard to walk. So we were walking around, and we walked past a shop that was had kind of a glass front in there, and I looked in and I saw like workbenches and hand planes and saws and wood everywhere. So I was kind of intrigued. Hey, look, it's a woodworking shop. And then I noticed all around there were musical instruments. There were violins and violas and cellos and a big double bass sitting in the corner. And it was like a music, like a stringed instrument repair shop is what I called it. And that's not what it's called. Actually, the lady that worked there she came out from behind in a back room there, and saw us looking in the window, and she was working on a cello or something like that. And I kind of nodded. I said, "Can I come in?" And she said, "Yeah, come on in." And this lady is called a luthier, Luthier. A luthier is a person that works on stringed instruments, I guess. And this lady, Caterina Fronista, was the proprietor of this shop, and she does fabrication and restoration, location and vente de instrumente a cordes, which is, I guess, sale of instruments with strings. And so she was there in Avignon, and she has been there. She has been doing this thing for, I think she said 30 years, 35 years, something like that. And she was trained out of, I don't know, in high school or instead of high school or out of high school. She was trained in this craft, and she knew all about wood. and she knew all about the physics of waves. She knew about botany and how trees grow so you get good wood. It was fascinating stuff. And unfortunately, my wife had to sit there and listen to me chat with this lady about all these wonderful things regarding woodworking. It was a fascinating discussion. Very, very pleasant lady, and she really loved her work. Like a lot of the craftsmen you meet when they are doing high end. I don't want to say niche because that's kind of it's a niche craft, right? Not everybody has a cello that needs repairing, but it's a specialty craft, and it requires very good people to do this. And she is, there are not a lot of luthiers in the world because there's not a lot of instruments that need to be taken care of. There are a lot of them, but a lot of them have fallen apart. The one she was working on at the time was a cello, and she had, I don't know how you open it up. I think the wood they used back then was typically what's called hide glue, which can be removed with essentially with warm water is a way to put it. So they steam things and they heat up the glue, and the glue loses its tackiness, and you can pop things apart, and you can fix holes that have developed in the wood, cracks that have developed in the wood. You can reseal the glue joints. But she had this cello taken apart, and she was, doing whatever you do to the inside of a cello. And it was remarkable. Here's another one of these examples of things that I had no idea that I didn't know. The science and physics inside of stringed instruments is incredible. What's going on inside there, and all the different things that have been figured out through the centuries, and how to give these things their wonderful tone. She was working on a cello, like I said, was 200 years old. She taught me all sorts of things about how they amplify the bass sounds for the strings that are on the low end of the scale. They get amplified with a thing called a bass rod or a bass stick inside of the cello box. We talked about the how the strings are made, how the neck is made, how it's reinforced, all the different kinds of wood, and how the like the wood you put on the bass side of the cello and the wood you put on the treble side, I guess, of the cello, those it's best if the grain, I guess, would be the way to think about it. The fibers that are in the wood on the bass side are bigger. You want like if you have a board that you're going to use to make a cello, you don't want to just cut it and make a board. You want to look to see what the grain pattern is like. How straight are the grain? How straight is the grain in that area, and how thick are the fibers? And if you have some places where the grain is very broad, meaning that they had quicker growth, then that's better for bass, I guess, or maybe it's better for one way or the other. There's a thing to learn, and the amount of knowledge that this lady possessed just off the top of her head doing these things was incredible. And of course, 45 minutes later, I'm sitting there talking about cello, and my wife's reaching over, pointing at her watch, and because we had to get doing some other things because we had to get to the next thing on our trip. But that was the first great Bufnagle interaction. Was the interaction I had with Caterina Franista, the luthier in Avignon. So if you are in need of a cello or a violin or viola, or any other, what is it called here? Any other instrument cordis, then you contact me, and I will put you in contact with Caterina Franista in Avignon, and you can take your instrument over there and get it repaired there. And that would be a great reason to go to Avignon, would be to do some business with this lady. She was wonderfully just wonderfully hospitable. It was a great thing to have. So we went there, had some lunch. Everybody sits outside in France, even in November. It was a little bit chilly, but people love to sit outside when they eat in front of the beautiful buildings that are there in the downtown area. We did the same, and had a little lunch, and then had an eclair on the way on our walk to the bus station to take that to the rental car place so we could rent a car for the next piece of our trip. The reason we went to Avignon in the first place, because it was the closest place to a convent that we went to visit in La Barreau, which is let's call it 45-minute drive from from Avignon, depending where you start, of course. And our daughter married a young man who has a sister who is now a sister at the convent there in France. And my daughter and her husband and their kids have gone to France a number of times to visit Sister Magdalena. And of course, her parents have gone there to visit. She's a cloistered nun. So she is on the other side of calling it a screen is too glorious for. She's on the other side of a partition. We can see her. You can talk to her. In theory, I could reach over and touch her, but we didn't do that. That was their rules, and they decide to live by these rules, and all is good with that. Her parents have, like I said, have gone over to visit numerous times, and we thought we wanted to go to see her to do this thing. We had met her before our daughter got married, and we enjoyed our very brief conversations we had with the soon-to-be Sister Magdalena before she left for France. So she's in a cloistered convent there. Sometimes it's called a monastery. I'm not really sure what the difference is, but anyway, there in La Barreau is the abbey of Our Lady of the Annunciation. And Sister Magdalena is one of approximately 30, I'll just call it 35 women that are Benedictines, and they run this monastery / convent / abbey, whatever it's called, on a hillside in a beautiful valley there in that area. I think it's in Provence, in the southeastern area of France, just to the east of Avignon. And on the other side of the valley, which is how convenient and how fun, is a monastery where the boys live. The monks live on the other side of the valley, and you can make a little about an hour walk from one to the other, and you can go from one gift shop to the other and see what they have available. The nuns at the Our Lady of the Annunciation there, the nuns do all the work, with very few exceptions. When we were there was one nun in full habit and regalia, wearing a face shield and ear protection, running the weed eater, trimming a hillside that I wouldn't have tried to do with my weed eater. It would look fairly dangerous, but she was up there in full nun garb, tending the garden, as they would say. That was part of her job to do. There were, like I said, some of the nuns work in the gift shop, and they are on. There's a little, the barricade extends through the gift shop, so the nuns are on one side and you're on the other side. We had very pleasant. We had, how do you say it? We had phenomenal interactions with everyone we met there, as you can imagine. The Benedictine nuns and in general, and Sister Magdalena in particular, were just bubbling. Is that sufficient? What is super bubbling? Whatever that is, erupting with just immense. What's the word? Like she was joy, just joy. But if there's like a word for big joy, I would capitalize joy. But then the O and the Y, the O and I would capitalize with the J, and then the O and the Y would be lowercase. But that seems like, so I capitalize all of them, but I could like double cap. Maybe the joy should be one of those big script letters that's in the front, like a drop case letter in the first page of a book, and the O and the Y would also be big. It's just that's what they had. They had this tremendous amount of joy, smiles on their faces. They are doing God's work, maintaining the garden there, and working, doing their own, how do you say it? Their own little piece for the greater glory of God and for the betterment of man. And it was a wonderful experience. We stayed at the guest house there, which was no. This is not an old place. This is a relatively new place. This abbey was built, I think, about 50 years ago. So it's not. It's not an old castle with moats and drawbridges and things like that. It's a relatively modern building. It has indoor plumbing, electricity, all those things. The guest house has a full kitchen in case you and your friends want to go there and stay for several days and do what's it called? Just do a vacation, do a relaxing vacation at the Abbey. Uh, it is the scenery was wonderful. That area of France is beautiful, and a lot of places in France are really beautiful. That was not a surprise to me, but it was a thing I had not recognized was so true. The so you could go stay there at the guest house. Like I said, they have a full kitchen. You can do your cooking there. Of course, you got to clean up, right? There's plates and cups and pots and things like that. Plenty of tables for you to have your big meals. You can sit around and play cards if you want. You could go for a walk. You could walk over to the monks to the monks' abbey, to their monastery, and check them out. There's an old abandoned aqueduct that runs through the valley between I call it the girl monastery and the boy monastery, that runs between the two. And as you walk between them, you will come across this thing, and it looks kind of like a Roman aqueduct, but just pieces of it. It wasn't very big. It did some work. It was built in the 1800s, I think, and there's just components of it left. There was a geocache. Those of you who do geocaching, there was a geocache right next to the stonework that is still remaining there. So that was fun to find. So you can go and vacation there for a couple of days, and we were there for 2 days. We we arrived on the first afternoon after driving from Avignon, and we were able to get an audience with Sister Magdalena for 45 minutes on that first afternoon. Now, you may think, well, you have to get an audience. Why can't they just come out and talk to you? I say, well, because they're busy. They're busy working. They work all the time. Just one thing that Sister Magdalena does is she runs the gift shop. They have to order things that they're going to, there are books there to buy, and there are rosaries you can buy, and there's candles you can buy, and I don't, anything you want. It's a religious bookshop. Okay. That's what it is. And there's other things. Some of them make, they make jellies, and they pick grapes. They have a vineyard. So they grow grapes to make wine. They don't actually make the wine. The monks make the wine, but there's a joint effort between the nuns and the monks. So she gets 45 minutes. She had 45 minutes to chat with us. They have a very busy day. They have prayers early in the morning, like at some unknown. I didn't know there were hours that early in the morning. They get up and they do their prayers early in the morning. They sing in beautiful Gregorian chant, and then they have mass. They have mass during the day, and then they have afternoon prayers and evening prayers. And I went to Compline, which is the last prayer in the evening at 8:00, both of those nights. And they have been there doing that every night for 50 years, and they all just keep going there. It was quite I don't want to say it was a show because it's not a show. It's a wonderful thing to experience. They are not there for your entertainment value. They are doing what they think is a good way to live. They live very simply. They have given up. They have only internet so that they can send and receive email in case somebody orders, in case they need to order products for the bookstore, or in case we want to schedule an audience with them, something like that. It's a very wonderful, simple life, and it's not for everybody, of course. I mean, if we all did that, it wouldn't work. But there's, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do this life on this planet right, and that is one of them. And it's an interesting social dynamic. We did talk with her at one point. We had 45 minutes with her on the first day we were there, and 45 minutes on the second day that we were there. And we shared some news from back home, and we apologized for not sending more letters. And it was all wonderful. And she shared, what's it? I had to ask her, what's it like? You live here with, well, how do I put it? 35. And she's what, 35 women? I said, yeah, that's exactly right. 35 women. She said, there are challenges. It is just because they're nuns doesn't mean they're not people anymore. And there are challenges there. And the question is, how do you learn to give that up? How do you learn to give up yourself for the group, for the whole? And that is the thing she said. It's very much, if you were raised in a family, it's very much like a family. How do you bring yourself to lower yourself so that the family can thrive? And sometimes that's very difficult. You may have to raise that up the chain. There's a chain of command, kind of thing. It's not like they have a boss, but they have a spiritual director, and they have people that are looking out for them. They have older nuns and younger nuns. Sister Magdalena is 30, low 30s, something like that. And there are, like I said, there's 35 nuns there. Sister Magdalena is a little over 30, but she is not the youngest one. There are 7 that I think have joined after she has. And so and the oldest one has been there since the 70s or the 80s. So the people it is a broad and very age diverse collection of women that are living very joyfully, but not without human tumult, apparently. But that's one of those things in life that you have to learn to deal with. And even the nuns go through that. And I would guess that the monks go through that sort of thing as well. These are human beings at their core, and they are trying to live a holy life. It is it was one thing to be in the gift shop and talk to the lady. Actually, was on the floor of the gift shop, telling us where the candles are and where's the Bibles and things like that. She was helped us schedule the audience with Sister Magdalena, and so we met with her, and we met with Sister Magdalena in the discussion room, one of the rooms. And then the other interaction I had with the nuns was at Compline, which is the evening prayer at 8:00. And I thought, well, I'll go, because they have a church there, and the church is also how do I say it? Is segregated between the area that is behind or in the cloister and out of the cloister, and the Compline started at 8:00, and I got there at 7:56, 4 minutes early, and there was nobody there. I mean, it was all dark inside. A couple candles, there's always that one candle that's lit, and I sat down kind of toward the front, because if I was toward the front, I could kind of look askance and see see where the nuns were sitting. And like I said, it was dark, and I thought maybe I might have the wrong, are they in a different room? Am I not at the right place? But at 8:00, I heard a bell ring, and a nun appeared, and she opened some doors and turned on a few lights, and got some things set up. And then the others came in pairs, 17 pairs of them, I guess is what it was, 16 pairs, maybe somebody was sick. I didn't count. But they came in little prayers. And I don't want to say marched in, because they entered dignifiedly. They entered with dignity, and they bowed at the altar, and then they took their little seats on the where they always sit. And I don't know if they always get the same. It'd be interesting. I didn't get to ask her that. Do they always sit in the same seat? Do they rotate? Do they, is it some sort of seniority order? Well, it was whatever it was. They sat there, and then one of them started the prayers. And I don't know if they were in Latin or if they were in French. To me, the sounding between Latin and French sounds about the same to me now, basically, because my French is so poor and my Latin is even worse. But they did the Compline prayers there for almost an hour, and then they were done. And they stood up, and they exited 2 by 2, and they went to where they are going, because they go to bed then, because they have to get up at some ungodly hour to do it again tomorrow. And and I thought, well, I wonder how long I can stay here. Is this going to be open? Do they lock up? I didn't know. And then after they had all left, a couple minutes later, one nun reappeared, and she walked through, and she locked the back door, and then she locked this other door, and she shut off some lights, and then she went into the, to different areas. And she I could see that she was locking up, and I knew that I was going to get kicked out. I just wondered exactly how it would take place, because there's generally a, outside of an hour a day that they have for, I guess they call it recreation, which is probably, Sister Magdalene, I think, called it like recess in school, where they have recess and they talk and they go for walks and they do whatever they do. Sometimes they have a little, there's a pond there, and they have a little inflatable raft. Sometimes they'll go, paddle around in the pond. And she showed us some pictures of them playing rugby, which was very fun. She said they had to stop playing rugby because they got too violent. Anyway, they generally are silent, except for recess. and except when they have to, or when they're talking, like in the when we had an audience with her, a one-on-one session, or if they're working at the gift shop or interacting with people like that. But generally they're quiet. And when I was in the church there, and the final nun was walking through, I saw she locked pretty much everything up, and I was the only one there. And she kind of walked toward me, and she kind of held up the key in her hand and kind of wiggled it. Here, I'm locking up, and I nodded, and I excused myself from there and left. And then I heard, not long after I was walking up the stairs outside, that the door's locked and they were down for the night. And 8 hours later, 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., whatever it was going to be, they were going to be at it again. And even though I was going to be snuggled warm in my bed there at the guest house, it was a wonderful interaction there. Like I said, I went to the monks shop. We did a little grocery shopping at the little town that is near the monks, near the kind of not between the two abbeys, but near the pair of abbeys. And that was our trip to the convent, which was unfortunately the high point of the week. We kind of should have kept that for last, but it was so good. And that was really the reason we wanted to go. Like I said, Olivia had gone before, and she's been there twice now. I think at least twice, maybe 3 times. And we just felt we wanted to go to see that. And that was our trip to the convent. Now, that was like the first 2 days. And like I said, we were there for 10, and I'm already at 30 some minutes here. So we're going to call this quits for today. We're going to get next time to another shrine that we visited, and then a trip to some other sites. Joan of Arc is in the equation here coming up. The city of Lyon is in the equation. And then finally into Paris, we will return with some great experiences, and one that was not particularly good at all. But we'll take this up when we see you next time here on The Buff. But until then, we will remind you to seek the good, live virtuously, and flourish, and enjoy the adventure of life.
It's going to be a great day.